My name is Jack Jin, and you can check out my LinkedIn profile for more information about me. So, my last video covered 20 topics in 8 minutes, and that was probably not the most successful endeavor. However, got some attention and some good questions from the folks in the comments. Try not to name any names, but I appreciate all of them. Thank you so much. And here, trying to dive in a little bit, reflecting on some feedbacks I've gotten from some very smart folks. I went too fast and covered way too many topics and did not go deep enough in any of them. So with this video series, I want to keep it casual and then kind of just go down each one. So the first one is we're going to talk about is CICD and infrastructure setup in agentic flow. The architecture I decided to go with was Node.js, and that's the only framework, right? There's no A and an N. The point of this, more or less, right, to build an AI agent, but really, right, to kind of prove out vibe coding, right, coding without writing a single line of code, but also, right, do something with AI so I can learn more about prompt engineering. Anywho, so the first part, let's go break down this diagram line by line, right? So the first part is enabling myself and my local GitHub Copilot to test. So for this, what you really need to do is just kind of go here, right? Kind of hit AZ login. And then what Azure typically does is it will ask you, which one would you log in with? So I pick my personal account, right? So this kind of lets you log in to Azure. And I'm selecting my subscription. Kind of going back here, right? If I were to go to portal.azure.com, what's happening with this is that it's taking the username, all right, of my actual login. So whatever my login here, right, is what's happening. So whatever permission this user has is what my local codex has, right? And then as well as my my AI. And most importantly, let's just dive into the AI resource a little bit, go a little bit deeper, go a little bit slower, as some of my friends recommended that I do. So here, if I were to go to my Azure resource, right? If I go to AIM, click on role assignments, right? Here you'll see that I have a bunch of managed identities, which we'll go into a little bit, right? And system principles, service principles. I guess the one thing I want to call attention to is that my user, right, Jack Jin here, is what's giving basically my AI access rights, right? So when I log in here, right, it's because I configured Jack Jin here, right, is what's giving this user rights. And then manage identity, right, use my identity is having this. Codex, right, this is a little bit having to do with service principles, right? So both my Amazon and my Codex kind of share the same service principle. And here, I'll kind of show that off as well. So if I go back here, right? So here, right, I'm just kind of walking through. I'm not going to show you my secret value or anything. But here we have my Codex, right, and my Amazon EC2. So these two values, right, kind of map to EC2, which we'll get to later. But also, right, Codex, right, that's how it's mapped. And then kind of showing off as well, right? So open AI, right? Sorry, GitHub action, right? How I'm able to restart my service passwordlessly, right? And all this is kind of done using something called federated credentials, right, in Azure, which is really just another word for OpenID Connect, right? So here, right, we can add in any number of OpenID Connect that's available. Of course, GitHub Actions is by default supported, which is nice, which is cool. So anyway, so my GitHub flow, which I should show off as well. So here, right, you can see that I am basically doing a release, right? And then here I'm doing my AZ login, right? Notice how there's no password here, right? There's no password because we are using this OpenID Connect. So that's something we're using to achieve the passwordless state. Yeah, and then of course the web app, right? This is fairly standard. Web app uses managed identity to access AI Foundry. And then someone posted in the comments, again, thank you so much for the comments, right? What am I using? Well, I'm using Azure AI Foundry. Maybe let's show it off here as well, right? So here, and then there's multiple versions of the AI Foundry. The one I'm using is just the OpenAI version. There's multiple AI Foundries in Azure. So right now, this is the OpenAI version, and that's the one that's deployed on, and that's the GPT-4o mini. It's very inexpensive. It's literally pennies for millions of tokens. That's why I use it. As well as, right, there's other foundries, right? For example, there's other foundries out there on Azure that's more advanced, right, where it supports more models. So here, we have a Foundry, right? And then here you can see that models here would be supported a lot more. What's cool about all this, right, is that one model has one API, one Foundry has one API key, right? It's literally one key for all these models combined. And so I think it's very cool, right? You can have DeepSeek, right? This is not the web UI that you send information over, right? This is the ones that deploy on Azure that is very safe and secure. So, and then, right, they have Mistral, right? So you have Llama, literally, right? Any models you want, one single API key gets you there. The one I'm using, I created some time ago, is just the open AI version of it. Yeah, so this AI Foundry is actually what's connected to it, right? I'm now going to show you my API key, nor am I really using it. Again, I'm using manage identity to access this. So even this API key, there's nowhere that's using it in the application. Again, the authentication is done using 0 Azure Foundry API keys, and it's all done using proper Azure service principles, right? Arguably really good cloud practice. All right, looking in some Amazon stuff real quick. We do have a CloudFront instance. CloudFront is free apparently, which is great for life. So thank you, Amazon. Here, if you're familiar with CDN configuration, you can do reverse proxy real easily. And I'm using the year-long free of my EC2. Notice that it's not a container, right? It's not an app runner or anything. However, it's free, and I like free stuff. So here we have a free CDN, right? It's pointing to my EC2. It's giving me a free certificate, which is great for this domain. And then here, right, just your usual standard free EC2 for a year. And then here, right, we have a cloud terminal. And then how I'm deploying this is I'm managing this in my GitHub account. So if you look at my GitHub account, there's this thing that's out there. Right, and then Docker's installed and all the scripts that's here is installed, right? So here we can see that deploying is fairly straightforward. And then the password, right, just trying to be secure as well in Azure. Password is stored properly in the in the Amazon secret store. So anyways, that will show off my Amazon setup as well. So the other topics I want to kind of talk through is, what am I doing? This diagram could have been drawn a lot better, for sure. Right, so basically here we have a browser, right, that then loads the page and then content processing. And we have a bunch of CSR, asynchronous calls back to the controller that does a bunch of stuff. Technically, if I copy this and then do that and then make this bigger. So technically all this is part of the Next.js flow. So basically what's happening here is that for async, so what's happening here is that when client flow, this is a POC, so this is kind of proving out stuff. So it's not the best engineered, architected flow ever, right? Ideally, this should be managed server-side, or even, in the agentic world, AI manages this. Anyways, this client-side managed. What's happened here is that we have a bunch of asynchronous calls, right, over to controller. And I have a service tier, right? I'm still old school, so I like service separated from DAO. And that's what I learned, right, through this AI engineering process, is that you really should separate out your prompting. Just kind of show this off as well, right? So here I have a separate prompt folder. What I learned is that, if you follow what's considered best-in-class prompting, right, AI actually gives you accurate results based on your enums, which is crazy, right? Like this just, gosh, can automate so many things from migration to everything else if this thing works as often as it works right now for me. Anyways, really important, right, to separate out your prompting. Prompting JSON, data access layer, very simple, right? It's OpenAI code, and all this code is in my GitHub, so feel free to take a look. And yeah, I think someone asked a really great question, right? How is it, or what is it? How is it going to access AI? Well, it's doing it using Azure AI Foundry, right? And then we're connecting directly to Git 4 Mini, right? Again, this is even manage identity, right? None of these are using direct passwords here. The only password is at the service principal tier and not at the AI tier, just for fun, I guess I like security for fun from time to time. Okay, I guess that's all the content I wanted to cover today. Again, gonna go with deeper content and go much slower, and hopefully everyone's able to process and understand this one. Please let me know if you like video contents more than my blog content. Love the comments. Please keep them coming. And yeah, we won't show the dystopian diagram this time. Thank you for watching, and hope everyone have a great day.